Virtually every time I attend a social gathering, the conversation inevitably turns to customer service. Somebody relates a horror story about how they were recently mistreated. The listener then relates an equally bad experience, which, by the way, reminds me of one of my bad experiences. Not too long ago, one of my speaking colleagues called me on a Saturday. He was very ill. He had a speech on the coming Monday, and he asked if I could fill in for him. I said, no problem. When I got off the phone, I called up one of the major airlines to book my plane reservation. They told me that the fare was $500 one way. I said, could you find a better fare than that? They looked and said, oh, here's one for $169, and it's a 3-day advance purchase. I said, why get my hopes up? I don't qualify for it. She said, yes, you do. I said, how do you figure? She said, today is Saturday. That's day 1. Sunday's day 2. Monday's day 3. That's 3 days. I said, hey, if that's the way you count, book it. So she booked it, and I asked her to send me the confirmation via email. On Monday morning, before my flight, I decide to print out my boarding pass, and there's a block. It says you have to call the airline. I couldn't print it out. So I called up the airline. I get one of the reservations agents. She pulls up my record, and she said, oh, I see the problem. I said, problem? What do you mean problem? She said, you were quoted the wrong fare. You were quoted $169. The actual fare is $500. I said, you know, I got into this conversation with your reservation agent, and she told me that I qualified. Now, because of that, I never called any other airline, did not make any other inquiries to see if I can get a better fare somewhere else, somehow else. She said, well, sir, it's a 3-day advance. You did not qualify. The rules are the rules. You have to pay $500. I said, look, can I speak to a supervisor? She puts me on hold. Minutes pass by. Minutes. The supervisor answers. Now listen to how she answers. Yeah, what do you want? I said, what do you mean, what do I want? Are you familiar with my situation? She said, yes, and you're paying $500. I said, wait a second, you don't even want to hear my side of the story? She said, it's irrelevant. Irrelevant? I said, I was quoted $169. If your agent made the mistake, why are you punishing me? She said, sir, our policy is 3-day advance. You do not qualify. You are going to pay $500. I said, look, I'm not going to get anywhere with you. Can I speak to your supervisor? She said, sir, I am the highest person at this location. I said, well, listen, give me the number of corporate. I'm going to call corporate and plead my case to them. She said, it won't do you any good. I said, you don't know me. I mean, just give me the number. I'll take care of it. She said, it won't do you any good. I'm going to put something in your record to tell corporate how you are. I said, what do you mean how I am? And she just ran on like this. And I said, look, just give me the number. She gives me the number. And then before she hangs up, she said, you're not going to fly for $169. You will fly for $500, or you're not going to fly at all. Click. Well, have you ever experienced anything like that before? This is what I call a moment of misery, where the experience falls well short of your expectations. Now, I want you to contrast that with another experience not too long after that, where I went out looking for a pair of slacks. Now, it was a pair of slacks that matched the sport jacket that I had. I go into the store, major, super department store. I won't name the name. You'll know what it is. I go and I ask for the pair of pants. They have all these slacks that are exactly what I'm looking for, but not in my size. So the person says, let me go look in the back and see if there is a pair that's your size. Well, anyway, they go back there, they come back, and I can see just from their facial expression, you know, they're walking back like this. I can see from the facial expression that it wasn't in stock. Now, how would you feel if the entire interaction ended right here? They didn't have what you wanted, but the person went the extra mile, went looking for it, came back, and in a very positive way said, sir, I went to the back, I looked everywhere, and I'm sorry to say, we just don't have it in your size. Would you feel pretty good about this?